Welcome back to my underground layers. So, we've been talking a lot about the campaign in the East over here in Virginia. The Union Army was having the devil of a time trying to get to Richmond, Virginia. Remember, Richmond, Virginia is only it's less than 100 miles from Washington D.C. It is closer. Richmond is closer to Washington D.C. than Atlanta is to Chattanooga, and yet could not get there. the the Confederate commanders were just too skilled, and the Union commanders were too timid. They were just too afraid to just go after them, despite the fact that the Union Army had way more manpower, way more resources. Just in so many ways, the Union had the advantage, but yet they still kept getting turned back by the Confederates. But now, even though, looking at this battle map down here in Virginia in 1862, over here, the Union Army was having a horrible time. If we look back at the war in the West, the Union Army was doing much, much better. You had General Ulysses S. Grant take his army through Kentucky, and he starts attacking right over here, what is now, or what used to be, Fort Henry and Fort Donelson. And it was at Fort Donelson that General Grant got his particular nickname. You have General Jackson called Stonewall because he stood there like a stone wall and he didn't move. And now you have General Grant gets his nickname. So a battle rages at Fort Donelson, and the Confederate general knows that he is about to lose. Like, he is not going to come out the victor. So he sends a messenger for terms of surrender. It's like, okay, what are the terms going to be? Like, I'm going to give you this, you give me this. Like, what's it going to be? Because a lot of times surrenders were not total give up. It was, I'll give you a little bit of this and I'll march away. But no, Grant said, I want unconditional surrender. And that became his nickname. He became Unconditional Surrender Grant. And so two very important victories at Fort Henry and Fort Donelson that put almost all of West Tennessee at his mercy. And then he continued to march south with his army down not that far away from Memphis, and that's where he had the Battle of Shiloh. The Battle of Shiloh had the single bloodiest day of any conflict in the Civil War. Now, it's not the bloodiest battle. It didn't suffer the most deaths in the entire Civil War. We're going to come to that battle later. But in one day, the casualties on both sides added up to more deaths and woundings than in the entire Revolutionary War and War of 1812 put together. It was an incredibly bloody day, and it was also the Battle of Shiloh was the first battle that was actually photographed. Like, it was documented, and when those documented like photos and pictures and articles got back to the people in both North and South, mainly in the North, people were shocked. Like, war had always been this glorious thing talked up in stories, and when you don't get to see it in books or on the internet or wherever, you just have to take people's word for it. But now people had photos of just horrific conditions. They took photos of battlefield hospitals, which looked like butcher shops, just blood everywhere and severed limbs. And then with Shiloh, you had people blown apart by cannon fire and shredded by canister shot. Like, it was intense, and people were just, as I said before, just absolutely shocked at the horrors. And we're going to talk about more of what was going on at the home front in our next video. So please stay tuned for that. You'll also hear about the campaign marching towards Vicksburg.